Everyone seeks fulfillment, but relatively few live in a way that produces both. Some chase one and sacrifice the other. Some talk about both but never establish the discipline to attain either. Most individuals look for shortcuts. They ask what to do, but rarely ask who they need to become. And that's the difference between what people want and what they really experience. It's not just about strategy, it's about habits. Wealth isn't only about how much you earn, it's about how you utilize it, what you construct, defend, and multiply, and fulfillment. That's not about external benefits, it's about alignment, living in a way that represents your values, your identity, your vision. It's about crafting a life that not only looks wonderful but feels right. If you want both lasting prosperity and real fulfillment, you have to build habits that promote both. Not hacks. Not bursts of motivation. Patterns. Repetitions. The kind that transform discipline into identity and identity into results. The distinction between people who keep growing and those who continually beginning over isn't talent. It's rhythm. It's structure. It's how they spend their mornings, how they think about money, how they deal with pressure, how they bounce back when things go wrong. And above all, it's how they choose to live when no one is watching. Because real success is quiet. It's not loud. It's not always evident. It's concealed in how you manage your time, how you direct your attention, how you take care of your mind. And when those habits are strong, when the foundation is solid, you don't have to pursue results. You attract them. You don't force progress. You live in a way that makes it natural. So many individuals want to acquire money fast and end up devastated within. Others chase purpose and disregard the practical side of creating financial strength. But you don't have to choose. You can live in a way that creates both. But it won't happen by accident. It happens through patterns, through philosophy, through precision. Your habits aren't merely routines. They're expressions of your ideals. They are decisions repeated constantly. And every habit is either propelling you toward prosperity and fulfillment or pushing you away. There is no neutral. Your life is always being shaped either by design or by default. So this is about design. About deciding what kind of life you want by how you live each day. Not once in a while. Not only when you're motivated, but every single day. Because it's not what you do infrequently that matters. It's what you do consistently. That's where your power lies. It doesn't matter where you started. Doesn't matter how you grew up, what you have today, or what mistakes you've made. What counts is developing a way of life that drives you ahead. A system you can rely on, and that system, it's founded on habits, not random actions. Habits. And when the proper habits stack up, they create more than progress. They produce momentum, confidence, flow. And with time, you stop being someone who craves money and fulfillment and become someone who lives it. How you speak, choose, act. The first power habit, owning your time with precision, because time is the one resource that never lies. You can feign effort, fake passion, fake your way through conversations, tasks, and appearances. But how you spend your time always indicates what you truly value. Most people don't own their time, they survive it. They travel through each day in reaction mode, fielding calls they didn't expect to answer, responding to problems that were never theirs to address, saying yes to things that don't align, and seeing their most treasured hours slip into cacophony. They're fatigued but not effective. Busy, but not building, present but not powerful. If you want to develop lasting riches, if you wish to live a really fulfilling life, you must decide that your time is not for sale. That your calendar is not a dumping ground for other people's priorities. That your focus is a precious currency, and you're done spending it on things that don't multiply. And that starts with clarity. If you don't know where you're heading, every task feels urgent. Every distraction feels justifiable. Every demand looks to be your obligation. But when you know your vision, when your goals are defined, when your objective is anchored, everything gets easier to evaluate. Does this serve the mission? Yes or no? That's it. You stop questioning, do I have time for this? Then start questioning, is this aligned with the life I'm building? Because the people who build true wealth and deep fulfillment don't say yes just because they can. They say yes because it's right, because it fits, because it's part of something bigger than the moment. So you construct systems. You build structure. You don't just hope the day goes well, you engineer it. You know your priorities before the sun comes up. You block time for what matters. You batch tasks to reduce friction. You defend your focus like it's your most precious asset, because it is. And you say no, not because you're disrespectful, not because you're too busy, but because you've learned a weak yes is more destructive than a strong no. You've realized that every time you say yes to anything misaligned, you're saying no to your deepest priorities. Your energy is not endless, your lucidity is not indestructible. And the more you dilute it, the less effective you become. So you simplify, you cut the fluff. You stop worshiping bustle and start honoring productivity. You stop being amazed with entire calendars and start developing important ones. You give yourself margin. You create space to think, to breathe, to ponder. Because wealth is not built in panic, and fulfillment is not found in overwhelm. And you track. You don't assume you're using time well. You measure. You examine your patterns. You examine how you spent your week, not to condemn yourself, but to refine the technique, to determine what's working, cut what's not, then change the rhythm until it serves you. Because owning your time isn't about perfection, it's about power. It's about deciding how your minutes accumulate into hours, turning your hours become days, turn your days into a life. It's about being able to look at your calendar and say, this reflects my values, this reflects my vision, this reflects who I've decided to become. And that ownership starts with the small things, what time you wake up, where you spend the first 30 minutes of your day, what you give your attention to before your mind is fully awake. Whether you begin with creativity or consumption, whether you start in reaction or direction. Every behavior surrounding time tells your nervous system who's in charge. So you pick structure over sloppiness, rhythm over randomness, boundaries over burnout, not because it's trendy, not because someone stated on stage, but because you know what happens when you don't. You know what it feels like to wander through the day, to lose hours to distraction, to run out of time before you've done what matters. And you're done living like that, because time compounds, and how you treat today impacts your future, not just in your financial account, but in your health, your peace, your relationships, your reputation. Time wasted doesn't just go, it leaves a trace. And time wisely spent doesn't merely pass, it creates a legacy. This is where the shift begins, in your awareness, in your decisions, in the way you defend the first hour and close the last one, in the method you block time for deep work instead of living in constant interruption, in the way you stop racing from task to task and start moving from intention to execution. And once you live this way long enough, something changes. You no longer feel behind, you no longer feel rushed. You no longer feel like you're chasing a life that keeps going faster than you can, because now you're choosing what gets built, and your time starts multiplying, not just in minutes, but in meaning. The second power habit is mastering the way you think about money, because wealth isn't just produced through action, it's built through thinking, through belief, through identity. And if your connection with money is built on fear, shame, or scarcity, it won't matter how much you earn. You'll undermine it, mismanage it, or push it away without even realizing. Money doesn't just follow work, it follows alignment. The folks who earn enduring riches don't just hustle harder, they understand money differently. They see it as a tool, as a magnifier, as a mirror of value and a medium for contribution. They don't idolize it, but they don't detest it either. They respect it. They partner with it. They learn how to control it with intention. Most people inherit their money perspective from those who struggled with it. They hear terms like money doesn't grow on trees, or rich people are greedy, or that's too expensive, and absorb that as truth. They grow up with subliminal ideas that money is dangerous, that possessing too much will separate them, that wanting it is selfish. And even when they try to accumulate money, they do it with shame, with inner conflict, with tension between what they desire and what they believe they're permitted to have. So the first step in mastering your money habits is becoming aware of such stories. Ask, what did I learn about money growing up? How did the people around me talk about it, handle it, respond to it? What do I believe about wealth? And is it actually true? Because most individuals never question their ideas. They exist inside genetic constraints, repeating cycles they never consciously choose. But once you see the beliefs, you have the capacity to modify them. You start replacing shame with stewardship. You start substituting guilt with gratitude. You stop thinking of wealth as something that takes, and start seeing it as something that builds, that blesses, that generates. And that new perspective shows up in your everyday habits, in the way you track, in the way you spend, in the way you invest, not just in assets, but in yourself, in your abilities, in your network, in your energy. Because affluent people don't only raise their cash worth, they grow their self-worth, and they don't treat every dime the same. They make judgments based on value, not just cost. They budget not to constrain, but to direct. They understand that a budget isn't a prison, it's a plan. It's a plan that directs your money where to go. Instead of wondering where it went, they give every dollar a job. They don't leave their financial future up to hope. They measure it, they design it. They invest regularly, not only when they are ready, not when the situation is perfect. They invest as a habit. They recognize that money is built by constant labor, not chance actions. It's developed by planting seeds, not chasing sudden windfalls. Wealth rises by compounding modest wins over time, not by aiming for a home run once a year. They focus on managing risk, not by avoiding it, but by understanding it. They study, they learn, and they don't follow the crowd. They ask better questions. They defend what they've built, but they also position themselves to develop. Wealth is not about stockpiling, it's about leverage. It's about leveraging what you have to construct something bigger than what you started with. They give not out of shame, not because it's fashionable, but because they've learned that giving multiplies everything. Gratitude expands capacity, and giving enhances flow. The more they give, the more they receive, not always in money, but in serenity, in connections, and in purpose. This isn't magic, it's mindset, habit, and financial honesty. And once you establish it, you stop seeing money as a cause of stress and start seeing it as a tool for strategy. You stop being reactive, quit playing defense, and begin playing offensive. You create margin, develop a cushion, and stop living paycheck to paycheck, not because you hit the lottery, but because you stopped wasting money on things that don't matter. You stop trying to look rich and start deciding to be rich, quietly, consistently, and consciously. Wealth starts accumulating, not just in your money account, but in your decisions, in your confidence. Now, you have options. You're not stuck in survival mode, and you're not obliged to tolerate things you loathe due to financial pressure. You're no longer behind on your dreams. You're developing from a position of purpose, from a mindset of stewardship, and from a daily practice of financial mastery that mirrors the person you've decided to become. You're no longer terrified of growth. You're no longer ashamed of wanting more. You're no longer apologizing for aiming higher because you've changed the tale. And once the story changes, the behavior results follow. The identity follows. You're not simply someone who seeks riches, you're someone who makes it, lives it, and multiplies it. The third powerful habit is continuously protecting and growing your energy. Because all the strategies in the world are pointless if you don't have the energy to implement them. You can have clear goals, a sound financial plan, and a great schedule, but if your energy is scattered, depleted, everything slows down, or worse, everything collapses. Most individuals handle their money with more intention than their energy, but energy is the root. Money is only a resource, but energy is the engine. You utilize your energy to make decisions, to create, to solve issues, to lead, and to connect. Once your energy declines, so does the quality of everything you do. If you seek permanent prosperity and true fulfillment, you cannot burn yourself out to get there. You can't pound yourself into the ground and expect peace to bloom from the ashes. You have to learn how to fuel the machine, not simply run it. Prioritize sustainability, not just speed. And it starts with your inputs, the fuel you put into your body. Sleep, nourishment, movement, water, and breath. These are not optional, they are non-negotiable, they are fundamental, because your body is the vehicle that bears your ambitions. If you sleep 4 hours a night, live on sugar and coffee, and relocate once a week, don't be shocked if you're irritated, distracted, impulsive, or fatigued. That's not weakness, that's chemistry, that's your body raising the alarm, your energy bill coming due. Stop playing games with your health. Stop pretending you'll take care of it later. Stop waiting for a crisis to push you to act. Your energy is sacred, your vitality is part of your strategy. You don't have the luxury of crashing, and you can't afford to live in chronic exhaustion. You create habits that value your body. You sleep because it matters, because it's vital. You stop bragging about how late you stayed up and start preserving the hours that recharge you. You give your mind space to heal because creativity doesn't thrive in constant strain. It thrives in restful rhythm. You eat to fuel your body, not only for comfort. You move every day, not for appearance, but for clarity, strength, and focus. You hydrate as if your future depends on it. Because it does. You breathe with intention, using the entire capacity of your lungs, not shallow panic breaths as you rush through every activity. You eliminate what drains you, physically and emotionally, the chats that deplete your spirit, the habits that leave you numb, the folks that don't respect your boundaries. You don't have to be unkind, but you do have to be explicit. If anything costs you your tranquility, focus, or energy, it's too costly. You cease overcommitting. You stop being available to everyone all the time. You recognize your energy is finite, and if you waste it on the wrong things, you'll have nothing left for what actually counts. So you audit, subtract, and simplify. You establish rituals that restore you: stillness, silence, nature, laughing, thankfulness, things that make you feel alive, not simply productive. Fulfillment doesn't come from achievement alone. It comes from relationship, connection to yourself, to others, and to something more than accomplishment. You treat your energy like a bank account. You don't just withdraw, you deposit. You arrange time to reset. You honor your healing days. You respect your limits, not because you're weak, but because you're intelligent. You understand that power isn't about always going hard. It's about understanding when to push and when to halt. And when you live this way, you stop crashing. You stop burning out every few months and calling it grinding. You stop living in a perpetual state of depletion and pretending it's noble. You realize that true excellence is sustainable. It's consistent, grounded. And your excitement becomes contagious. People feel it in your attention, in your presence, in the way you come into places, in how you tackle obstacles. You're no longer reactive, you're intentional. You're no longer dispersed, you're grounded. You're no longer stretched thin, you're grounded deep. Overflowing allows you to scale, to develop riches consistently, to live with fulfillment instead of aggravation, to multiply without crumbling, to expand without breaking, to lead without losing yourself. The fourth power habit is managing your inner dialogue, because the most essential discussion you have each day is the one you have with yourself. You can construct systems, devise plans, generate riches, and achieve goals, but if your inner voice is filled with doubt, guilt, fear, or self-attack, you will always feel like you're failing, no matter what you achieve. Most people carry an inner dialogue molded by criticism, rejection, failure, or disappointment. At some point, they cease needing people to doubt them because they've taken over the job themselves. They've transformed self-correction into self-rejection. They've turned reflection into rumination. They've internalized every error, accentuated every shortcoming, and constructed an identity rooted in not enough. That voice runs on autopilot. It wakes up before you do. It murmurs in times of stress, shouts after failure, and questions your ability every time you try something new. If you don't take control, it will become the loudest influence in your life. It will overpower every tactic, deplete your energy, and ruin your confidence before the world even has a chance to test it. But here's the truth. Just because it's in your thoughts doesn't imply it's true. Just because it's familiar doesn't imply it's accurate. That voice isn't your destiny, it's your programming, and programming can be changed. The first stage is awareness. You can't mend what you don't notice. You need to notice the pattern, hear the tone, and identify when you're bullying yourself, speaking to yourself in a way you'd never speak to someone you love. You have to stop allowing that voice go unchecked, and then combat it, not with meaningless platitudes. Real, solid truth. Remind yourself of your progress. Speak to yourself with the same power you'd use to encourage someone else. Stop waiting to feel secure and start speaking as if you're someone who deserves to win. This isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about refusing to tear yourself down while you're trying to build something. You may keep yourself accountable without considering yourself a failure. You can admit faults without internalizing shame. You can face your imperfections without believing you're unworthy. When you create this practice of speaking to yourself with clarity, courage, and grace, you transform everything. You create safety within your own mind, and when your mind becomes a safe environment, your world becomes easier to navigate. You're no longer fighting yourself or getting in your own way. That frees up energy, mental bandwidth, courage, and attention. You no longer waste time second-guessing yourself or spiraling over every error. You don't talk yourself out of progress, nor undermine your momentum with self-inflicted uncertainty. Instead, you become your own coach. The voice that says, "We keep going." The voice that says, "This doesn't define us." The voice that says, "We know who we are and where we're going." And that voice gets stronger each time you use it. You begin to catch yourself when the old speech surfaces, and instead of obeying it, you redirect it. You don't strive to silence fear, but you cease letting it lead. You don't eradicate uncertainty, but you learn to respond it, not with more anxiety, but with movement, with action, with reality. That becomes your new rhythm: thinking, awareness, correction, reinforcement, again and over, until the old voice isn't the default anymore. until the tale you tell yourself fits with the vision you're constructing, until your self-talk becomes the fuel, not the friction, and your life starts reflecting that transition. You quit procrastinating, not because the chore became simpler, but because the worry went quieter. You come up more confidently, not because you suddenly became great, but because you stopped criticizing yourself for being human. You establish greater relationships, not because you changed the world, but because you altered the way you speak to yourself. This behavior is unseen, yet it's foundational. It supports every other habit because your existence is mediated via your beliefs, and those views are developed by repetition. If the primary repeat in your life is self-judgment, you will develop a life that mirrors that judgment. But if the prevailing rhythm becomes self-leadership, you develop a life that reflects power. So speak power, speak vision, speak truth. Train the voice in your head to match the life you're making. And when you continuously do this every day, without hesitation, you don't simply change how you think, you change how you live. The fifth power habit is creating an unshakable inclination toward action. Because without action, all the clarity, mindset, and organization mean nothing. You can read the books, set the goals, and design the routines, but if you're not taking action, you're trapped. If you're not moving, you're stalling. And stalling doesn't feel like a threat until you look up and realize a year has passed and nothing has changed. Most individuals don't struggle because they don't know what to do. They suffer because they don't do what they know. They hesitate, they wait, they let fear take their time, they overthink, they overplan. They want things to be perfect before they make their initial move. But life doesn't reward thought, it rewards action. You don't build confidence by thinking, you build it by acting. You don't develop momentum by preparing, you build it by moving. You don't find your rhythm by waiting. You find it by starting, even if it's sloppy, even if you're hesitant, even if you don't feel ready. Especially if you don't feel ready. Because ready isn't a feeling, it's a decision. It's the choice to act before the dread disappears. It's the dedication to progress above perfection. It's the decision to live as if your future depends on what you do right now. Because it does. And those who produce money and fulfillment don't wait for incentive. They establish systems for action. They've made movement non-negotiable. They don't always know exactly what to do, but they do something. They experiment, they adjust, they repeat, they allow action to teach them. That's the strength of bias. It's the default. When in doubt, move. When doubtful, move. When fatigued, move. Not recklessly, not blindly, but with intention, with awareness. Understanding that clarity typically arrives on the opposite side of motion, not before it. This doesn't mean hurrying for the sake of rushing. It doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It involves reducing the gap between idea and execution, inspiration and application, thought and traction. It's about developing a rhythm where activity isn't something you have to urge yourself for. It's something you live in. This behavior removes innumerable hurdles. It kills procrastination, silences overthinking, and neutralizes fear. Not because fear fades, but because action makes you stronger than it. Every time you take a step through dread, you remind yourself that fear isn't a wall, it's a curtain, thin, transitory. Once you push through, it loses its power. You start to build evidence. You prove to yourself that you're the kind of person who takes action. That you don't need to feel perfect to make progress. That you don't need permission to move forward. That the act of doing is where progress lies. You learn faster. You fail better. You develop them all at once, but in waves, in streaks, in reps. The more reps you get, hesitation decreases, excuses fade, resistance weakens. What once felt heavy starts to become automatic because action produces flow. It creates clarity. It reveals the next stage. You stop sitting on the sidelines waiting for the complete staircase. You just step on the next stone. Your movement generates trust. Trust with yourself, with your team, and with the folks watching, wondering if you'll genuinely show up. And showing up, that's the habit. It's not something you do just once in a while or only when things are simple, but constantly. In anguish, in doubt, in imperfection. Because the more you show up, the more you become the person who shows up. And that identity, that's where the magic rests. You stop being the person who wants to start a business, and you become a builder. You stop being the person who wants to get in shape, and you become someone who moves. You stop being the person who has promise and become someone who produces, delivers, and builds. None of this is random. It's not about luck. It's not about timing. It's about repetition, repetitions of action, reps of courage, reps of doing the thing, even when it's unpleasant, uncomfortable, or uncertain. The longer you wait, the harder it gets. But the more you act, the easier everything becomes. So make movement your default, not just when you feel ready, but when you're terrified, fatigued, or when you've failed. Even when the voices in your head advise to wait, move anyhow. That's the habit. That's the standard. That's how momentum is developed and sustained. The sixth power habit is mastering how you respond to setbacks. Because no matter how good your strategy is, how clear your vision, or how strong your discipline, life will still hit back. You will face delay, rejection, loss, and disappointment. It's not personal. It's not a sign that you're broken. It's part of the process. What differentiates the people who live in affluence and fulfillment from those who are stuck in survival is not the absence of difficulty. It's their response to it. The people who prosper don't escape adversity. They're just schooled to manage it differently. Most individuals strike a wall and think it means to stop. They encounter failure and let it define them. One plants a seed of uncertainty that blossoms into hesitancy. They hit resistance and take it personally. They internalize it. They quit, not because they're weak, but because they were never taught that pain is part of progress. The people who cultivate real resilience expect resistance. They recognize that breakdowns lead to breakthroughs. They've educated themselves to feel pain but not yield to it. They take the hit, but they don't stay down. They regroup, concentrate, and return stronger. This response is not a feeling, it's a habit. It's a muscle trained over time. You don't wait till the storm hits to find out how to lead through it. When setbacks hit, I soar. When disappointment occurs, I reset. When plans change, I adjust. Why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this building in me? You change from victim to student, from shame to structure, from fear to focus. Because everything that happens may either define you or develop you. You get to choose. You stop making setbacks personal. Just because you failed doesn't mean you are a failure. Just because something broke doesn't mean you're broken. Just because someone departed doesn't imply you're unworthy. Setbacks are data, signals, lessons. And if you stay in the lesson long enough, you grow. You learn to zoom out and see the wider picture. You realize that one poor week doesn't erase a year of growth, one rejection doesn't erase your potential, and one failure doesn't erase your identity. You stop squeezing every problem into your identity and instead establish a process for coming back. A way to reset. Whether it's writing, movement, prayer, or coaching, whatever your rhythm is, you develop it before the storm arrives, so when it happens, you don't rely on willpower, you rely on your system. You get excellent at letting go, at releasing what you can't control. You cease clinging on so hard that you disrupt your own momentum. You cease needing everything to be perfect before you go forward. You get comfortable with mess, with motion, and with progress. Even if it's not all sorted out yet, this is how you stop stopping. You stop making setbacks imply something they don't. You stop turning delays into detours. You cease letting short-term emotions influence long-term decisions. You feel it, yet you don't fold. You slow down, but you don't stop. And this practice of resilience, of recommitment, builds something deeper than momentum. It builds belief. Because each time you return, you prove to yourself that you're not defined by the hit. You're defined by how you answer. Your identity grows stronger, not because you avoided failure, but because you kept moving through it. People will start to notice, not when you win, but when you keep coming back. When you get better instead of bitter. When you grow instead of stop. And you'll start to notice too. You'll notice that the same obstacles that used to wipe you out for weeks now barely last a day. What once felt like the end is now just part of the beat. Resilience isn't something you try, it's something you live. So you quit hoping for the time you never fall. Instead, you start getting better at ascending. You stop needing the path to be smooth, you just get better at walking. That practice of rising, of returning, of recommitting to the vision no matter how many times it cracks. That's the behavior that produces lives that last. The seventh power habit is defending your surroundings with intention and intensity. Because no matter how strong your attitude or sharp your behaviors, if you stay in an atmosphere that contradicts your principles, you will inevitably fall back into alignment with your surroundings. Your surroundings is more than just where you live. It's what you see, what you hear, who you spend time with, and what you allow into your space. It's the mood of your home, the energy of your relationships, and the setting of your talks. If you don't guard it, your environment will influence you slowly, softly. Most people underestimate how much their environment influences them. They assume they can construct a powerful life in a harmful space. They assume they can generate tranquility when continually surrounded by noise. They assume they can pursue clarity while accepting chaos. But the two are incompatible. You don't merely rise to your ambitions, you fall to the level of your environment. If your environment makes it simpler to distract yourself than to focus, you'll default to distraction. If your environment normalizes whining, comparing, or settling, you'll absorb that even if you're attempting to fight it. So, you become obsessive about what you allow into your space, not paranoid but protective. Because you know you're a product of your circumstances, and if you want different results, you need to create a different atmosphere. That starts with assessing your relationships. Who has access to your intellect, your emotions, your decisions? Not everyone deserves that privilege. Not everyone is equipped to impact your future. The longer you keep people around who are trapped in who you formerly were, the tougher it becomes to become the person you're intended to be. This doesn't mean leaving everyone out, but rather upping your standards. It involves having real honest talks, guarding your peace, and choosing your company based on where you're headed, not where you've been. Guard your mental environment. Stop feeding your mind with negativity. Stop imbibing continuous torrents of trash talk and drama. Stop allowing your thoughts to be influenced by random noise. Start selecting what you let in, since what enters your mind will eventually come out. Read things that push you. Listen to voices that lift you up. Surround yourself with art, ideas, and discussions that coincide with the next chapter of your life. Make it easier to trust in your growth than to stay stuck in fear. Make progress feel natural, and treat expansion as normal. Physically, create order. Clean your workstation. Organize your environment to enhance clarity. Physical disorder produces mental confusion, and when your environment is untidy, your mind reflects it. This doesn't mean striving for perfection, but rather constructing structure, building flow. Design your space to serve your goal, not to hamper it. Because the more work it takes to do the right thing, the less likely you'll follow through. So, remove impediments by developing the path of least resistance toward your goals. When you do this, when you modify your environment with purpose, your habits become easier, your energy stronger, and momentum grows organically. Your surrounds begin to support the improvements you're making. Your home becomes a haven of tranquility, not a source of tension. Your calendar begins to reflect your priorities, not everyone else's. Your circle mirrors your values, not just your past. You wake up every day surrounded by an ambience that reminds you of your vision. People will ask how you stay so consistent, so clear, and so serene. They'll assume it's your pure resolve, but it's not. It's your environment. It's the standards you've set and reinforced. It's the space you've built that mirrors the person you're becoming. And that area becomes a fertile field for growth, a launch pad that enables you naturally go into your next level. In this place, you cease accepting environments that exhaust you. You stop apologizing for needing serenity, for requiring order, for needing time to think, create, and focus. You cease shrinking to fit into rooms that were never meant for your future. You elevate quietly, persistently. And when your environment rises to meet your intentions, you stop striving so hard to move forward. You've removed the weights, cut through the noise, and established a space where success and fulfillment are no longer things you chase, but things you breathe. The eighth power habit is living according to your principles, not your feelings. If you simply act on what you feel, you'll keep locked in circles. You'll start strong but fade rapidly. You'll develop momentum, then sabotage it. You'll ride the highs of enthusiasm and tumble when pressure hits. That's the loop most people live in, chasing steadiness only to lose it to emotions. Feelings are real, but they are not a stable foundation for decision making. Feelings fluctuate. They alter with your sleep, your meals, your mood, the weather, or a conversation. If you allow your decisions to be constantly affected by your emotions, you'll never build the consistency needed to create sustainable success. You'll never establish anything lasting if you remain at the mercy of the present. Values aren't fleeting. They don't change every day or shift based on your mood. They ground you. They offer you with a reference point when your mind gets noisy, reminding you of what counts, especially when everything around you feels unclear. This habit is simple, but it's not easy. It's about doing the right thing, even when it's inconvenient. It's about speaking what needs to be said, even when your voice trembles. It's about showing up when checking out feels easier. It's about holding the line when you'd rather lower the bar. It's about choosing long-term alignment above short-term comfort. And it all starts with identifying your values, not just the ones you like the sound of, but the ones you're willing to live by, the ones you'll endure for. Because that's how you know something is a true worth. It's not about what you say when things are easy. It's about what you still choose when things are challenging. Maybe your values are discipline, honesty, progress, service, courage, peace, faith, contribution. Whatever they are, you name them, write them down, commit to them, and then filter every decision through them, not your preferences, not your feelings, not your comfort, your values. When you lead with your values, you don't need incentive. You don't need to hype yourself up. You have a compass, a standard, a why that's stronger than any justification. You move from principle, and that movement is powerful. You establish habits that reflect those principles. You shape your routine around them. You correct your course when you wander. You don't simply talk about integrity, you live it. You don't just talk about self-respect, you demonstrate it by following through. You don't simply talk about gratitude, you show it in how you contribute, how you lead, how you treat people. This is how fulfillment is built, not from comfort, but from congruence. It's understanding that the way you live aligns with what you believe, that your effort echoes your intentions, that your decisions show your character, and it affects how you feel. Ironically, when you stop pursuing feelings and start living by ideals, your emotions become more steady. You trust yourself more, you regret less, you spiral less. You acquire a sense of internal peace, not because life is easy, but because you know who you are. You stop waking up and asking, do I feel like doing this today? Instead, you wake up and ask, what does my best self require of me today? Then you do that, not perfectly, but consistently, because you've stopped being a slave to the fluctuating weather within your thoughts. You've become the one who decides how the day unfolds. This is the road to lasting power. You stop making temporary choices. You quit needing constant incentives. You cease living like a thermostat that rises and lowers with your circumstances. You become the furnace. You set the tone. You bear the flames. People start trusting you, not because you're loud, but because you're grounded. Not because you're charismatic, but because you're consistent. They know what to anticipate from you because you know what to expect from yourself. That's steadiness, that trust, that's riches, that's impact, that's legacy. And it's not built in spectacular moments. It's built in the quiet ones. It's built in the moments when no one sees. When you say no to the excuse. When you say yes to the hard thing. When you declare, I will, even when everything inside of you wants to pull back. Because you've chosen to lead, not with emotion, but with identity. Not with hype, but with values. Not with ease. And that choice, that habit, that pattern of choosing the tougher right over the easier wrong, that's what makes you unstoppable. You don't need extra motivation. You don't need another breakthrough. Nor do you need someone to come rescue you or bring you a better opportunity. What you need is to decide that the life you want, the prosperity, the fulfillment, the tranquility, the power, is something you're ready to cultivate and nurture daily. The secret isn't in the cacophony, the hacks, or the short bursts of inspiration. It's in the routine, the rhythm, and the quiet, often undetected, consistent execution of habits that propel you ahead. The 8 power habits you've learned are not magic, nor are they exclusive. They're open to everyone, but they only alter your life when you commit to them. Owning your time with precision, managing your money with intention, protecting your energy, dominating your inner dialogue, taking consistent, urgent action, responding to setbacks with strength, curating your environment, and living with values over feelings. These are not jobs to tick off. They are standards to aspire for, anchors to return to, and lenses through which to see your life. Especially when things feel out of control, life will challenge you. You will get distracted. There will be days when you stumble, forget, or feel odd. That's not failure, that's being human. But the difference between those who develop something big and those who don't is that the powerful ones return. They remember. They reset. They refuse to stay down. It's not about perfection. It's about tenacity, resilience, and taking full ownership of what you can control. When you do that, when you stop waiting for the perfect moment, stop seeking outside approval, and start living these behaviors from within, that's when you build something different. Something unusual, something real. You begin attracting opportunities that correspond with your discipline, establishing relationships that represent your identity, and making decisions that create your future. Not simply your past. The gap between who you were and who you're becoming starts to close, not overnight, habit by habit. And soon, people will start asking how you accomplished it, how you become so concentrated, how you stopped violating promises to yourself, how you started showing up with clarity, confidence, and consistency. You'll tell them it wasn't easy, but it was earned. Earned through the early mornings when you didn't feel like showing up, the silent decisions to say no to comfort, the discipline to keep moving even when progress looked slow, and the devotion to the process long after motivation waned. The life you're establishing isn't random. It's not an accident. It's the product of the person you chose to become and the habits you trained yourself to live by. It's the harvest of the seeds you planted, the behaviors you nourished, even when quitting looked easier. So, you keep going. You keep ascending. You keep leading, not out of pressure, but from vision, not from panic, but from identity, not from force, but from flow, because you've developed the habits that sustain you. And now, your habits are developing the life you always knew was attainable.